Excellent. There we
All
are.
right. Okay, we are live on Facebook. We're just doing this on our Facebook page, not on the actual event. If you came through the event, that's going to take you through to the Zoom link. And so, first of all, welcome to the first ever John Cooper Group Real Estate Readiness Webinar. This webinar is targeted towards anyone that is not sure whether they want to get involved in real estate ownership. Maybe you haven't decided that you want to be a home buyer. You're just curious whether that's even for you. And you know, there is no right or wrong answer. It's different for everybody. What we're going to try to do today is take off a few of the layers. So, you know, the uncertainty attached to getting involved in owning real estate, you know, call there 20 layers of uncertainty. We're hoping we can take off a few of those layers today and also maybe point you in the direction of where you can go to get the information you need to determine whether now's a good time to be buying for you, or whether now or anytime. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And where are those slides? Just one second here. There it is. Going to go full screen with these. All right. So panel of experts are here and we are getting started. On the call today, can you guys see the faces, or are you guys just looking at the slides?
I see the faces.
You can see our faces?
Yeah, it'll be different for each person's custom Zoom settings, but okay. I have it set so I could see all the hosts right now.
Okay. All right, so these are our four experts. I'll introduce myself really briefly, then we'll hear from Trevor, Rory, and Jen. And so I'm John Cooper. I've been in real estate here on Vancouver Island since early 2008. I launched my career in the last economic real estate crash we had back in 2008. Started my career with Remax, ran a top 100 team there for several years. We moved over to eXp Realty a little over a year ago, and spent a lot of my practice working with first-time home buyers. And these are first-time home buyers are some of my favorite types of clients. As of late, I spend a lot more time on the seller side than I do on the buyer side. And I've got two buyer specialists on my team, Trevor and Rory. They're both here with us today. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Trevor?
Thanks. So my name is Trevor. I moved over to the island about 6 years ago. I've been on John's team for the last 3 years, but recently licensed as of, this last year here. And it's I work primarily with people who are looking to buy their next real estate purchase, and have been on the island for a little while now, and just recently purchased my first place, and we'll get into that later. But
awesome, thanks, Trev. How about you, Rory? Introduce yourself for us.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm Rory. I work mainly with buyers here, everything from first-time home buyers to investors as well on the island. I grew up on the island. I did leave and came back as well because I knew this was the best weather and affordable real estate I would find. And happy working with the John Cooper Group and with them for just over 2.5 years now, I think. And happy to be chatting today.
Awesome. Welcome, Rory. And then, of course, it wouldn't be a real estate readiness seminar without a lending expert. Jen and I go way back. Jen, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, so I'm Jen Marks and I'm with Mortgage Architects in the Old City Quarter downtown. I am the typical life banker. So my first job at 19 was a teller. So I've been involved in banking for 20 plus years, and I've been an independent broker for 10 years. I came to the island in 2008 and have been living in Nanaimo for 12 years. Absolutely love it here. I love first-time home buyers. And for me, I would like them to know that there's no silly questions. So that's my favorite thing about a first-time home buyer. They'll often say, this is a dumb question, but I mean, just bring it all towards us. We've seen it all, and I just love helping them and not making them seem foolish when they ask about every little thing on a file. So,
awesome. Awesome. Yeah, it's easy to get overwhelmed, and you sit down with experts. It tends to throw around a lot of lingo, and it can be intimidating. We want to try to use simple language here and explain. So, with that in mind, here's the learning objectives for today's webinar. So, we're simply just going to do some basic looking how real estate works. More importantly, explore some common misconceptions. We're going to learn how real estate has been a key for wealth building over many people's lifetime, and including mine. And we're going to learn about market timing. We're going to talk about the importance of getting into the market sooner than later. And then we're going to build your knowledge, understanding, and access to expertise. So when you are ready to enter the market, you're prepared. So right now I'm going to cover some common fears, and these are fears that everyone on the call gets to listen to regularly. They're some of them we even had our own. You know, I had my own misconceptions and fears before I got involved in real estate ownership. And the big one being I have no idea where to start and I don't want to look dumb. You know, nobody wants to look dumb and nobody knows where to start. What I always recommend in terms of getting started is one of the most important first steps is to sit down with a real estate agent that you know, like, and trust, and help them determine really what your long-term goals are. They're going to really help you answer the why as to why you're wanting to own real estate and put things into perspective for you. That should quickly lead to an introduction to a lending expert, mortgage broker, bank, or the like. So here are the most common misconceptions we hear. I'm not settled enough, old enough, or married enough to buy a home. I don't know if I want to live in Nanaimo forever. If I buy a home, I'll be stuck here. This was one of my reasons for not getting involved in real estate sooner. I had a lot of misconceptions when I was in my early 20s about what real estate ownership meant. I didn't feel like I was I felt like I was someone that wanted to be free and travel and have the freedom to do what I want. So I put myself on the sidelines, and, looking back, regret that. The, real estate is a lot more liquid than you would expect. And there's a lot of flexibility within real estate ownership when you start to look at how you can rent it, how you can refinance it. So you really don't have to be locked down. I do recommend that you wouldn't want to necessarily be getting involved in real estate if you were going to be looking to sell within 12 to 24 months. So one of the first things that we look at is, are you sticking around? Are you going to be in this community for a while? Are you going to hold that investment for at least, 2 years? And usually closer to 3 is where the economics really start to lean in your favor. Okay, we're gonna dive on this one a little more. I love this this meme here that Nicole's got. You can't be broke if you don't check your bank account. We call that ostriching, or sticking our head in the sand. Dealing with the reality of your finances is scary for all of us, especially right now. I know we're dipping into a lot of us are dipping into our savings. A lot of us has been laid off. But really, this is, and Jen will talk about this more later, there's nothing that can't be fixed. And the sooner you start dealing with your finances, the sooner you're going to be in position to purchase, the sooner you have a piece of the market, the sooner you can start growing your wealth through equity gains rather than paying that of your landlord. So really, we get the fear of dealing with finances, but tear off the Band-Aid, look under the hood. Everyone has challenges in their financial picture, and there's solutions to all of them. So Jen will talk a little bit more about that. But this here of being afraid to deal with finances holds a lot of people back. And the sooner that you get to it, the sooner you're going to come out of it. I'm afraid to make a mistake. This is probably one of the top reasons that prevents people from making a move into real estate. And the line that I always reflect on is it's always easier to do nothing. It doesn't matter whether this is a real estate purchase or anything going on in your life. It's always easier to do nothing. And so, you might be renting right now. You're in maybe a situation that you don't love, but it's fine. You're getting by. It's working. And so it's easier for you to do nothing. And as soon as I do something, the the risk of me making a mistake now presents itself. And so if I do nothing, I don't have to worry about making a mistake. We make our living, all of us on the call, we make our living in terms of guiding you to not make a mistake. And I want to just take this moment to speak to the culture of our real estate team here, where we really don't see ourselves as being in sales. We are not in the sales business. We are in the agency business, which just means our job is to not try to take the path of least resistance to a trade and, objection handle you until we can get you to buy a house. Okay. We don't, that's not the type of team we run here. Our goal is to help you make great real estate decisions, and great real estate decisions compounded over time put you in better position to spend more time doing the things you love with the people you love in a place you love. We feel like that helps build great communities. That's what drives us. So our entire role in this path is to prevent you from making a mistake. And buying a home now is more challenging than ever, especially with the current COVID-19 situation. So more important than ever to have great guidance. And our goal is to help you to not make a mistake. And there's a lot of pitfalls that one needs to look out for. You don't have to have and Rory and Trevor know what I'm talking about here. You don't have to have every obstacle identified and solved before you start going down this path. There's safety checks along the way. So it might seem like this is totally overwhelming road. I don't even want to go down it. Once you go down it, we're going to focus. Okay, these are the pitfalls you need to look out for at this stage. Let's not worry about the next stage till we get there. So really common reasons. So common myths. You should be settled before you invest in real estate. I touched on that already. It is not, you don't have to have everything sorted out. You do want to have, 2 to 3 years of knowing that you're going to stay in one place likely before you start buying in real estate in most cases, unless there's a specific opportunity outside of that. But for most people, you need to be somewhat settled, but we're not talking married with kids, 25 years settled. We're talking like, are you starting a 2-year diploma program or a 4-year degree program in the Central Island region? It's definitely worth considering getting into real estate. Are you going to be taking on a new job where you're going to be doing this job for at least 2 to 3 years? This is a good time to start looking at getting in real estate. And Jen will talk about the timing of the mortgage application is super, super important. If you do have a stable job, stable income, maybe your future looks to a less stable job income. And now's the time when you qualify really nicely on a mortgage application, often is a great time to get started. So,
Hey, John, I can even add to that a little bit.
Please.
So I think a lot of people out there think there is just a mortgage, like there's just one type of mortgage, or it's fixed or variable. But just to add to that, where you said if you're planning, for example, we have a lot of products. There's a lot of mortgages out there. And if you're planning on, say, having a baby and going on mat leave, we have a flex mortgage where you can actually go on interest only payments for a year. So you don't have to worry about how that loss of income is going to affect you. You're not having to make the full mortgage payment. You can pay interest for a year. So and that's a flex mortgage, and people don't even know those exist. So that's one thing I wanted to just let them be aware of. And like you said, they don't have to memorize and know all these mortgages. That's my job. Just like you look at the dangerous stuff and you offset all the risks. That's exactly what I do. And we plan for the future. I get to know them, and you just take the stress of it off. So you don't have to bear the full burden, because that's what you and I are here for.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Jen. Super helpful. So, okay, you should wait to buy until you can afford your dream home. And I won't go too deep into this, but this is one of the number one objections we get that keep people on the sidelines for way too long. And I'm going to talk a little bit about where this comes from. But a lot of, when it comes to buying your first home, a lot of people are getting guidance from their parents. And that's awesome. It's good to get guidance from your parents. The times are a lot different now when it comes to getting involved in real estate than when our parents got involved in real estate. So what we notice all too often is the purchaser just wants to start getting into real estate. They're tired of paying rent, maybe living in their house, and they start to get out looking, and then the parents get involved, and suddenly the must-haves, which were, I need at least 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, I'm cool with a condo, I'm cool with a townhouse. A lot of times outsiders, a lot of time the parents are going to come in and say, no, you don't want to live in a condo. You need to live in a home. You need to have a lot. Ideally, it's got to be in the north end. It's got to be in the good school. And by the time you start adding it all up, you're just like, wow, that is something that I could never afford. And it's going to be forever until I can afford my dream home. And this is something that this is one of the biggest mistakes that people make, is they're saving they want their first home to be the perfect home. And unfortunately, that's generally not how it goes in this day and age. Normally we're going to have to get a foothold in the marketplace before we get into our big home. And the analogy that I love to use in this, and I'm sure it'll come up later, but the analogy that I want to use is one of a boat in the water. So you've got a sailboat in the water, the wind's playing, you're in the ocean trying to catch up to that sailboat, and it's blowing away, and the wind is blowing faster than you can swim. So as you're saving for your down payment, the market is rising and getting away from you, and you can't save fast enough because real estate's appreciating at a faster rate than you can afford to save. By the time you've saved up the down payment to get you your dream home, the goalposts have changed, and now you need more money. The advantage of getting into something you can afford early is you might not be in the sailboat, but you've got a line attached to the sailboat. So you're in a little dinghy off the side of the sailboat, but you're getting dragged along. So as that market's rising, you're rising along with it, and you're working your way into the sailboat. Okay. And so that dinghy off the side of the sailboat, if you're following the analogy, is that entry-level house, is that entry-level apartment. It's maybe getting the home with the suite that you didn't want right away. Okay. And working your way towards it. That is how 90% of people need to do it. The people that are getting into their dream home out of the gates have either spent an immense amount of time saving money or are getting a huge donation by selling in their family. Everyone else has to go about it and get into the home that maybe they don't love, that isn't their dream home, but they're not paying rent and they're building equity, and they're going to be able to leverage that investment when they do find their dream home. So this is a big one that I see hold a lot of people back, and it's a really difficult one to recover from. The quote that we hear used all too often is, don't wait to buy real estate, buy real estate and wait. I like that quote. I don't love it in all situations because sometimes it is worth waiting, but don't wait to buy real estate and wait. Okay, other misconceptions here. Once you buy a home, you have to live there until you pay it off. Not true. You're really only committed for the length of the mortgage term. As Jen already mentioned, you can get a portable mortgage. You can bring it to your next place. So you don't have to live there until you pay it off. This was one of the misconceptions I had when I was 19. You're looking at real estate magazines and you're seeing things like 35-year amortization or 20-year amortization. And when you're 19 years old, the idea of 20-year anything is just blows your mind. But it's not how it works. And Jen will touch on that later. I have terrible credit, so I can never own a home. Again, we hear this a lot, especially right now with people losing jobs, just saying, oh, I'll never own a home. I need to win the lottery before I buy a home. And then when we dig a little deeper and we say, well, how much are you paying rent now? And how long have you been paying rent like that? And what kind of job do you have? And what do you have your savings? You're like, actually, you could buy a home today. You could buy a entry-level condo. Trevor's going to tell his story here shortly, but you can get into real estate for a lot less than you think, and your net and your payments every month are probably pretty consistent to what you're paying in rent. And if you're getting a really good deal on rent right now, fantastic. Now you can stockpile cash for your down payment. Okay, more myths. Buying a home you can afford. Okay. where are we at here? Sorry. Okay, dispelling the myths. We already dispelled them as we went here. Okay, you can always have an exit strategy. Renting your home, selling it, it doesn't mean you're stuck. So we've dispelled a lot of these myths. Okay, I just talked about these 2 points. Okay, you can read the screen here. I don't have to read it for you, but you do need decent credit. That is banks don't like lending to people that have horrible credit, but credit is repairable. And the key point to that is you need to put time on your side. So just like we talked about at the start of the webinar, is put time on your side. Don't stick your head in the sand. And the sooner you deal with this, the better. Just looking at our live feed, and we're getting some pretty pixelated imagery here, but sorry about that. All right, so Trevor, you're one of the best examples of this as of late, and you're actually webcasting from your new condo in downtown Nanaimo. Tell us a little bit about your story, because I think it resonates in terms of being a good example of where so many of the first-time homebuyers start out and end up.
Yeah, so I moved to Nanaimo fresh out of high school. I was playing football here for the local team, the Raiders, for about 4 years. And I was bouncing around whatever kind of odd job would support my lifestyle of being able to stay here. My standards were pretty low of just as long as I'm on the island and as long as I'm able to wake up every day here, then I'm just happy. Anything else is a bonus. And once I started working in real estate, when I worked with John and his team, and started seeing the ability to get into property and seeing that, it makes a lot more sense that I've been here, close to 5 years, and I've been paying rent the whole time I've been here, and have been paying other people's mortgages. And I didn't have anything to show for it other than the stuff that I've carried place to place, and the whatever vehicle I picked up to carry me around for when I was here. And I realized for the long-term ability for me to stay here, especially when you see the increase in rent and trying to find good roommates and not feeling like I was secure in one spot. Like I always felt like I didn't want to put all my stuff up on the walls, because I knew in about a year or so I'm probably going to have to move to another rental anyway. And for me, when the opportunity presented itself where there was an ability to get into a condo in a new build, where it made a lot of sense because I already worked in the industry and it was a little bit less intimidating. But at the same time, I still had, even though I worked directly in real estate, there's a lot of the questions that you hear constantly for first-time homebuyers. I had all the same questions, and it really took me sitting down with a mortgage broker and asking, well, even if I can't get a place, what will it take for me to get there? Because I know ultimately I want to stay on the island, and I knew I wasn't going anywhere anytime soon, and I wanted to build up a career here. So it made a lot of sense. And when I was able to sit down with the mortgage broker and really lay out, well, even if I wasn't able to get a place, I'd at least know what direction and what things I had to do to get there. And that conversation is, free to have. It's just a matter of having that time of sitting down and figuring out, okay, well, what next steps do I need? And then when I found out that there was a bunch of programs in place that were to support a first-time home buyer. So, I was concerned about having a large down payment. And so when I found out about the CMHC program at the time, where you're able to have 5% down as opposed to 20%, and seeing that there were opportunities to get into a place where my monthlies overall, with even having a mortgage, was less than if you were to go out and get a car payment and pay rent. And I was seeing that was the biggest misconceptions with friends of mine and people who are also my age who live on the island, was seeing people who had these really big rent payments that they're paying, $1,000 some bucks a month, and to have a condo or to be in a bedroom or a whole place to themselves, and then they also get this big lease payment or a big car payment. And then when you add up what they're paying every month and what they actually are getting out of the situation, you realize, you would be able to get out of a rental situation and own your own place, and perhaps in a couple of years sell it. And with that type of equity that you built in the home that you've been living in, and also the credit that you build from paying off a mortgage, you are able to take that kind of next step into getting something else. Like, I know, being in this condo, my long-term goal is to, in a couple of years, be able to either sell this place or rent it out and be able to purchase a home that, I could have my own piece of land, and knowing that I already have a good history with paying a mortgage for a couple of years and good credit. Being in the situation, I think it definitely makes a lot of sense. And starting it early, if you're planning on staying around a place and working for a while or getting an education, and it just makes a lot of sense. So
that's really good, Trevor. I appreciate you sharing. And you touched on one of the we recently published an article on our coopergroup.ca blog about this. We call it the #1 wealth killer, and we see it so much in people in their 20s who get roped in maybe into buying a pretty fancy vehicle, which absorbs the bulk of their down payment, as well as has a dramatic impact on their credit rating, as well as the amount of debt that they can carry. And it really impacts their ability to buy a home. And this is something that Jen will go into detail about. And but really, buying that new vehicle before you get into a house is really the wrong way to do it. If you're in a position to be able to afford a car loan, a nice car payment, I would strongly encourage you to look at real estate ahead of that. Once you're into the mortgage, no problem. Like as Jen says, it's really easy to get a car loan, even if you have a mortgage. It's very difficult to get a mortgage if you have a car loan, depending on where you're at. So getting the car loan, getting the car going, and then the house, I would argue you really need to look at, get the super modest car, and then let's get into the super modest house. And then let's look at where we can go from there. But trying to go the other way, I'm sure Jen sees so many people sit in front of her, and if they didn't have the car on the books, she could get them into a nice house. But because they already have this car on their financial liability side of things, it's really preventing them from getting into the house. And so there is one of the biggest mistakes we see younger people making right now, and that now puts them on the sidelines for 5 to 6 years because they're focused on that car payment. Meanwhile, the market's going up, their affordability is going down. It's a big mistake, and you can recover from it. But if you're sitting there right now, should I get into my first condo or should I go get a fancy new Tesla? Do what you like. One of them is going to add to your lifetime wealth, and one of them is going to take away from it. And the home ownership is going to add to it. The Tesla is going to take away from it. As cool as you'll look for 6 years as you're making those big payments. All right. Thank you for sharing your story, Trevor. It's an inspiring one. And I love seeing you set up in your new place there at 91 Chapel. What a cool building that is. And you should be proud of yourself. Next up, I want to hear from Rory. So Rory is one of our buyer specialists. Rory also, so you guys know, works with me. He assists me on the listing side of the business. So he attends a lot of listing appointments with me. So he gets to hear the conversations that we have of people that have maybe not had guidance by a good realtor when they buy, and some of the challenges that propose. So Rory, talk to us about what are some of the most important considerations for a first-time home buyer that might not be obvious.
Absolutely, yeah. I think when I was introducing myself there, I mentioned I work with both first-time home buyers and investors as well.
Rory's audio is a little bit off. Is everyone else getting that too?
Yeah. Maybe had to do a better.
To me, those are basically the same thing, because really an investment in plus, not just extensions of our personality. And once we can do that, we're able to, eyes wide open, see all the information in front of us in order to make a great informed decision. So lots of things to consider. I mean, the average time spent in a home before resale is 3.8 years. So it's actually a smaller time than you think. Not all of us, like our parents, bought a home for a very low price and stayed in it for 25 years. So when we have a quicker turnover, resale is very important to consider. Lots of things you can consider with that. You're looking at a property, an investment, or the property for your,
Sorry, Rory, we're getting a lot of feedback from you there. I'm just gonna.
You're looking at official community plans. You want to make sure you're.
Sorry, Rory, are you there? All right. Rory's having some connectivity issues. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, fine.
Sorry, Rory, you're really pixelated there. So, so what, I guess I'll just fill in some blanks and while Rory gets his internet connection sorted out. So I do apologize. But essentially, you know, as you're seeing on the slide here, two of the biggest considerations are one, making sure you can afford that home and the operating costs attached to that home for the length of time that you want to own that home. So not overextending yourself, and a good agent's going to prevent you from doing that. A good broker is going to prevent you from doing that. A lot of the conversation you're finding is revolves around what's the most you can afford. And that's not to find out what's the most you can afford so we can sell you the most we can afford. It's to find out what are the limiting parameters for you so that we can make sure that you get into a good home that you can afford. And so the question that we'll often ask you is to say, if you found the perfect home, didn't need anything, it had everything you needed, which is not likely that you're going to find that, what can you afford to pay for it? And then we can reverse engineer from there. So, okay, this one needs work, so we're only willing to spend up to X. Excuse me. The other one is to look out, and this is the last point on here, is future liquidity and resale. And this is what Rory was saying about, yes, we want our home. It's nice to think of our home as an expression of who we are. We watch a lot of HGTV. You see a lot of people like, you know, making expressions of their individuality through home ownership. That's great. I'm not sure at the first time you're buying a home, that's the time to make those expressions. So, you know, if we talk about leveraging the strategy that we talk about, you know, just getting a piece of the market and trading up, future liquidity and resale is really important. And there's some fatal mistakes that you can make that are going to paint you in a corner and make it really difficult. So Trevor and Rory, when they're helping you buy a home, they're always looking forward to when you're going to call us in 3 to 9 years later to sell it. We want to be able to proudly represent you on the sale. And so some of the obvious things that I'll point out now that sometimes buyers are willing to overlook, but they shouldn't, is things like super steep driveways. You know, a place that has a driveway like this, that's going to be really difficult to sell down the road. You know, a home that's right next to a highway, a busy road, a really dilapidated building next door, all of those things you might be willing to overlook because you don't care, you know, busy road, whatever, I don't hear it. It will impact resale. And so you want to be really conscious of it. And in a hot market, anything will sell, but you might not always be selling in a hot market. So when in whatever market you're buying into, you want to buy something that has high liquidity. So here on the island, like the picture that's up on there, you know, little ranchers, like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square foot rancher. That's about as liquid as a product as you can get here on the island. You know, a main level entry home with a walkout basement suite, super liquid. Like there is always buyers looking for that product if it's market priced. And so those are good ones those are good homes to look at. You know, the home built into the rocks with, you know, stairs to the front door and then, you know, 3 levels and you know, that are cool views from every room, but there's like 10 level changes in the house and you've got to walk up 20 stairs from the garage to get to the front door, that will be a nightmare home to sell in the future. Okay, there's a mismatch between what the market's looking for here on the island and what you're buying. So Rory and Trevor, these are things that they really look out for. Rory, you were cutting out there a little bit, so I just kind of covered from some of the content there, but from what you heard, is there anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, no, thanks. Sorry about that, guys. But yeah, that's a great. I think just really remembering that this is an investment. You know, it's a home, but we don't want to go too crazy with things like renovations as well. You can end up putting yourself in a corner with customizations that are, you know, really great for you, but are going to be really hard to you know, to pull that equity out on a resale. I think the common misconception with a lot of sellers as well is, you know, if I add $40,000 in renovations to my home, then I'm adding $40,000 to the list price. It's not necessarily. There's a lot of ways we need to make sure we're putting money into our property, so we can pull it out, which we want to do as well for our wealth growth in real estate.
Yeah, that's great. We call that the gold-plated countertop factor, right? Every home that you buy into is going to have a ceiling on it, so it doesn't matter what you do to it. You could gold plate the countertops and have diamond studded taps. That home still won't be worth more than $450,000 no matter what you do to it. And it's different for every house, but that's an important conversation as you're going through with your agent. If you're thinking, well, this isn't a home, but it would be a perfect home if we did all these things, making sure that the improvements that you're doing are going to add value. And it's okay if they don't. You just want to go in eyes wide open to know, hey, the $20,000 that I'm spending on the deck expansion because I want to have a huge deck is not necessarily, I'm not going to get that back when I go to sell it. And you know that, understand it, and are okay with it. It's totally fine. People do it all the time. Yeah. But what we don't want to see you do is go to spend $40,000 on the deck, come back to us and say, hey, you want to sell it for $40,000 more, and find out it's only worth $5,000 more, or even worse, it's worth exactly the same as before you did the improvement. So there's improvements you're going to do for you. There's improvements you're going to do for resale. That's a whole other webinar. But just the point is your agent should be pointing those things out. And if you're not asking the questions, they should be asking them of you, for you, as you go through this process. And again, that's what you're going to find if you're out looking with us home. We're not here to, oh, this looks perfect. This home's great for you, right? No, we're looking at, here's what's wrong with it. Here's what's going to cause you a problem when you go to sell it in the future. And what I try to implant in our agents and our clients' head is the question that you should be getting answered every step of the way is, if I were you, knowing what I know about your problem, here's what I would do. That's the money line. That's what you should be hearing from your agent all the time. Knowing what I know about what your what your challenge is, what your ultimate goal is. If I were you, I would do X. That is what agency is about. That's what you're paying for. You're not paying someone to look over and say, oh, that's nothing. That's no big deal. Let's write an offer and start taking the path of least resistance to a trade. They should be questioning everything. And if you're not asking the questions, they should be asking them for you. And if you know, that's the type of agency you're looking for, that's what we provide. Okay, Jen, who takes a similar approach to money lending and us. Jen, take it away on the Mortgage 101. And if you want me to flip it ahead a slide or whatever, just let me know.
Sure, sounds good. So one thing that's interesting that a lot of people don't realize, and this hit home for me a lot, was if you're out there paying rent and you've been consistently paying it for, you know, a year or so, you're already essentially paying a mortgage, but you're not paying your own mortgage. And that's why it's important to make that change if you think you're going to continue to, you know, live on your own and pay that monthly rent payment. So just to hit home a little bit more, whenever you first get a mortgage, about half of it, because there's a long amortization, about half of it will go to principal, about half of it will go to interest. So if you just think about that for a second, if you could save half of your rent and just put it in a savings account, that's what happens when you get a mortgage, because half of it is going to go to the principal to reducing it. So it's like a forced savings plan, which a lot of Canadians are not good at savings. It's not an easy thing to do unless your parents trained you on it when you started out. So think of it that way. The half of the mortgage will go right into your pocket because it'll start right away paying off the principal, and then that increases as you go. So that always gives people a little more incentive to get a mortgage and realize that you are getting a lot of value out of it. So next thing we want to talk about is what you need to do to get a mortgage. So first question I often get is how much cash do I need and where can I get it from? So minimum guidelines across Canada, like Trevor said, is 5%. So to come in with a down payment, you need to bring in 5% of the purchase price. And that can come from savings, and that can come from a gifted down payment from an immediate family member. So if grandma wants to help you out or your parents want to help you out, that's great. And then it can also come from a borrowed source too. So if you do have a good income, you can actually borrow it. And a lot of people aren't really aware of that right now. So it can come from those three sources. And because the government's aware of a lot of money laundering that can go in on real estate, whenever it comes from your savings account, you need to show a 90-day history. So if you're someone who likes to keep some money at home, maybe keep it under the mattress, get it in a bank account. That's the first thing I tell people. Get it in a bank account so you can show that 90-day history. So we're able to use that money to bring in for the down payment. So 5% down minimum. And then there's items such as closing costs, which are adjustments that I won't get into it too much because it can get a little confusing, but basically it's what it takes to complete this purchase at the lawyer. So your lawyer fees, some real estate adjustments. If you're a first-time home buyer, your closing costs are going to be about $2,000 or less. So keep that in mind too. So you're coming in with 5% and about $2,000, give or take. Again, I'll go through specifics with you always. If you're not a first-time home buyer, then you're looking at about 1.5% for closing costs. So that gives you an idea of what you need just for a start for cash on hand. Now, the next one we're going to look at is your income. So what the lenders like is they do like stability, but you don't have to be at your job for years and years and years to get a mortgage. So these are, again, general guidelines. I get exceptions on these all the time, but generally they like to see that you've been at your job for a year and that you've been in your industry for about 2. Now, if you've gone to school for your job, so you're a brand new teacher, for example, or you've gone and got your diploma in something and you're using that can be in your industry too. So general guidelines are 2 years in your industry and 1 year at your job. And we don't like you to be on probation. The lenders don't like that, but I've had people go in and close a file after they've been off probation. So again, there's lots of gray areas here. I'm just giving you general guidelines. So try not to be on probation, a year at your job. If you're one of those people that see nurses that get a lot of shift differential, overtime, you work at the mill, you get a lot of tips, you work on commission, then they'll be looking at about a 2-year average. So that's, if we want to use your full, commissions and income, that's when we're going to be looking at 2 years. So it's better if we're going to use all of your income to have 2 years on the books. So that's 2 years of tax filings, and we can go from your T4 income. But again, lots of flexibility. So these are just general guidelines, but it's more so what they're looking for. Can you go to the next slide? Thanks. So credit, this is a huge question, and I know John touched on it earlier. So general guidelines, again, you can be lent to by a lender for a mortgage if your credit score is 600 or more. And so some people are really surprised because 600 isn't that fantastic of a credit score. That's actually quite minimal. But that's when a lender will look at you. So if you've had trouble in the past, if you've had a collection you had to work on, that's kind of what your goal is, to get over the 600. Now, ideally, you want to be over the 680 score, which allows you more affordability. And we'll go into that a little bit later, but it allows you to purchase more of a home with that if you're over the 680. Now, a lot of people will say, my credit is this, and they'll get it from their credit card statement. There's something on there called Credit Keeper, and they'll say, oh, your credit this month is 710 or 715. Those are 100% of the time wrong, just so you're aware. So don't go by that. You can pull your own Equifax credit score for free. It's very easy to do. Just reach out to me and I can show you how to. Go by that. And I do encourage people, once they're even the beginning processes, to get someone to pull their credit and look at it. I can do it, you can do it on your own, and just see what's there, because it's often, actually most of the time, it's not as scary as you think. And once you take control of it, you make arrangements and you fix the little blips that were there. Sometimes there's things on there that you didn't even know about. I've had someone say, "Oh, that's not me," and we just fixed it. Things can be fixed. It takes a little while, but it's definitely possible. So for credit scores, try to get over that 680 mark. That's the best. The lenders will look and see, and they want to see that you have 2 credit facilities. So that would be a loan for a car, like a small car, of course, line of credit, investment loan, and they have to have a minimum authorized limit of $2,500. So that's kind of run-of-the-mill standard, is they want to see that you've been able to manage either a credit card or a line of credit or an investment loan that had $2,500 as the authorized limit or the balance originally. And that's it. And so they look and they want to see that you've paid that for 2 years. So that's the criteria for them. And so if you can clean up any mishaps or anything that happened in the past, and if you can show that you had 2 credit cards with $2,500 limits that were paid as agreed for 2 years, then that's all that they need to see. You don't have to have a huge line of credit. You don't have to have this huge history. That's all that they need to see to lend to you. And if you have thin credit too, there's always the guarantor route where you can ask a parent or grandparent or someone to go on and just give a little bit of peace of mind to the lender. You can get them on as a guarantor to help with the mortgage, to help get you into your first home. So the next one I'm going to touch on, the last one, is how does the lender decide what I qualify for? So it's all numbers and ratios, and I don't want to confuse anybody, but essentially what they do is they'll take your income and they'll take a percentage of it. So let's say you have good credit over 680, then they'll actually use 39% of your income. So we take your income before taxes, and then let's say it's 100,000, and we use 39% of that. So $39,000 of your income in the entire year can go to the principal and interest payment, your property taxes, and your heat. So principal, interest, taxes, and heat. And so what we do is we'll get a property and we'll plug in all those numbers and we'll see if it works. And that's how they calculate what you can afford. Now, let's say you did have a $4,000 car and you had a little car loan on it that was $100 a month. We can add that in. And when we add in your other debts, so your car loans and if you have any balances on a line of credit, that can go to 44%. So that's how they decide. They take your income and then they take the expenses on the home alone, or they add in the extra debt and they cap it at 44%. And it's all based on your credit. So that's if you have the credit over 680. Now, if your credit is not over 680, if it's below, then the ratios are a little tighter. So you get 32% of your income can go towards buying the home, and then 42% including your car loan and everything else. So that's why you can afford more if you have better credit. So I hope that's clear. And that's a good reason why to keep it up. And then last thing I'm going to touch on too is for qualifying. So a lot of people will think, well, if 44% of my income is going to my car loan and my house, like that seems like a little much. I don't want to be too strapped. And that's when we're talking about affordability. So because the government wants to prepare people and not have them set up for failure, we actually use a higher payment for the home, a higher mortgage payment than you actually pay. So right now, let's say I get you a rate of 2.5%. You have this hot little mortgage payment. It's not going to cost that much, maybe let's say $1,200 a month, and you get a great home. What we do is we actually qualify you on a higher interest rate. So the numbers I'm plugging into those ratios is actually the Bank of Canada rate. And the Bank of Canada rate is over double. It's 5.04%. So you've probably heard people grumble about qualifying and that it's a little tougher. Well, that's why it's tougher, is because we actually set you up so that you can handle an interest rate. So in 5 years, when your mortgage renews, let's say rates have gone up to 4.5%, because we qualified you at over 5% before, you can handle that increase, because on paper you can. So that's how they effectively decide what you can qualify for, and how we take a little bit of a risk out of it, because we're not maxing you out, that if rates go up down the road, that you're going to be hooped and you're not going to be able to pay your mortgage, because no one wants that to happen. So that risk is automatically kind of looped in there. So hopefully that's clear with people. Last thing I'm going to touch on is just myself as a broker. So I am independent, and that's a key too. A lot of people don't know that brokers can work for specific institutions, or they can be independent. So I get to work with all the major banks and lenders. So the great thing about it is my allegiance and my loyalty is to the client alone. So I'm always representing your best interest. And another thing that people don't know about brokers is that we're a free service for you to use. So you don't have to pay to talk to me and help me guide you through this process, which can be kind of scary in the beginning. And that's why I love dealing with first-time homebuyers, is because they get to answer the questions. I'm always on my cell phone. I'm always available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just shoot me an email and I'll help. And it's really helpful, but it's also a free service too. So keep that in mind, that the lenders pay me for bringing them good clients. So you can use my services and it doesn't cost anything. That's the last thing I wanted to hit on. So thanks, guys.
Thanks for that, Jen. That's super helpful. And I think, you bring up a great point there about this before we jump into the next step, is all of the advice that we're talking about here. So to be able to sit down with a real estate expert like myself or one of the buyer specialists on my team, costs you, there's literally no charge for it. And you're going to get an insane amount of free advice and guidance. And then you get to sit down with, someone like Jen Marks, who has, again, and years and years and years of experience guiding people through this, and they're going to put it all on the table, create a custom plan for you. And again, zero if you do nothing with it. So you sit down with one of our buyer specialists for a buyer consultation. You sit down with Jen for a financing consultation. You're going to learn so much about your specific situation and how real estate can support or not support your wealth goals. And your commitment is some time. And so in my mind, you just have nothing to lose to explore this in detail. You might decide at the end of it, hey, I'm going to wait 2 years because I'm just not ready, or I've got another opportunity somewhere better to put my surplus capital. Awesome. But at least you'll have the roadmap, and you can just keep it on your desk for when you're ready for it. Where else, in what other industry are you able to get consultations and plans put together for you with no cost? There's very few industries like this. Then first-time home buyers have just a ton of tools and resources at their disposal with very little financial commitment, if any. All right, which draws me to the next steps. And what are we doing? Yeah, we're 8 minutes left before we end here on time. So next steps, I'm just going to go over. And the first one's a fun one. Dream a little bit. Your dreams are your own. Everyone needs to connect with their why, their reason for wanting to build wealth, whether it's for themselves, for their family, whatever their reason is. Dream a little bit. Because you need that. You need that horizon to shoot for. You need something to plan for. And it might seem crazy. It might seem like I'm never going to be able to own a home with a nice yard in a neighborhood I love. You know what? That's not true. It might take longer than you want it to. There's a whole bunch of work involved to get there, but it is doable. I remember thinking I was, those of you who don't know, I was born and raised in White Rock. The average house price there right now is, I think, about $1.4 million. So the house prices that we're at here in Nanaimo at $550, I was looking at that average house price back in like 1999. Is when house prices in the town that I was born and raised in were at where Nanaimo is today. So I remember thinking when homes were there that it was impossible and I'd never be able to own it. And yet here we are, so there is a plan for everybody. You just need to start building it. And whether now's a good time to buy or not, and I'm going to do a quick little economic forecast here coming up in terms of like the COVID-19 opportunity. But, if we just take that sort of pandemic out of the mix for a second, the timing of a purchase is absolutely dependent on your situation and your goals. And there's just there's no cost to you other than some time to figure that out. And if you're dealing with the right people, if you're sitting down with an agent or a broker and you feel like you're getting pressured to do something you're not ready for, there is no shortage of experts out there. There's a lot of real estate agents out there. There's a lot of mortgage brokers out there. So if you're not getting the vibes that you want, then just move on. Go find somebody else. Go find somebody else that is speaking your language. Okay, and here we go. Next steps. So here's one, and Jen touched on this a little bit, but this is something we have all of our clients do before they're getting ready to purchase. Figure out what you're currently spending on housing. Let's get that number on paper. What's the maximum amount you're comfortable spending on housing, and how much do you have for a down payment, and how much could you pull together? If you're getting married or have a child on the way, there's a lot of things that you could blow money on that aren't going to help build wealth and safety and security for your family. Getting into real estate is. So there's just wrapping your head around that and having that vision in place to now go and reach out to the friends and family that all want to support you in your endeavor to build a healthy, happy family. Let's point all that at getting us into housing so we can have the stability and security we want. So that starts with the down payment. I know my first down payment, my first home, I'll share this with you. I got a $5,000 inheritance from my grandma. And that was formed like half of my down payment for the first house that my wife and I bought. It was a small, it's not a small amount of money, it's $5,000, but that one small $5,000 inheritance, it's not, I don't have, Donald Trump inheritances over here, was what I was able to leverage just to get my foothold in the marketplace. And it wasn't until the home I'm in now is our third house. And this is a type of home that I could see myself spending 20 years in. It took us, 3 homes to get into this scenario. And even this home, needs a ton of work and everything else. So then reflect on what your long-term plan is in terms of how long you're going to be in there. Okay, lastly, let's talk about a little bit. I'm going to overwhelm you with this crazy chart here. And this is just kind of showing you the impact that COVID-19 has had on the marketplace. And a lot of this is scary, at least when we take a snapshot of it. We're looking at unemployment here in the top chart. Over here on the right, the BC labor market. We've never seen an increase in unemployment like that. Negative decline in job growth. Average house prices have still been coming up, although they are, trending downward right now. That's probably what a lot of you are paying attention to, and this is notable. And then the trading volume here with this plummet in trading volume. This one here is a little misleading, though. Oops. Obviously, when you force people to stay home in a state of emergency in a pandemic, you're going to see a dramatic decline in home sales, and that's what we're seeing there. I think the important thing to note here moving forward, though, is that if you talk to virtually all of the industry economic experts, they're predicting a recovery within 12 months. So right back to where we were. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. Nobody does. But COVID-19 has really not much in common with the recession that we experienced when I started my career back in 2008. There's in terms of real estate, supply is still very low. Demand, particularly here in central Vancouver Island, where we are still the most affordable, best weather in Canada. We still have an average single family home price that's right in line with the national average of $550,000. So if you look at central Vancouver Island real estate, don't get it mixed up with what you're seeing going on in Edmonton or Calgary or even parts of the lower mainland. We're in a very different situation here. If you look at the baby boomers who control the bulk of the real estate wealth in Canada right now, they are looking to downsize both physically and financially. So smaller house, smaller mortgage, and they don't want to be in the cold climates anymore. So they're all moving west and they're looking for markets that they can afford. And so central Vancouver Island home prices that are under $750,000 in central Vancouver Island, there's a ton of demand for. We haven't seen any fluctuations in supply. Prices are going to hold steady. So in my mind, I see a small window of opportunity here for a first-time home buyer to find a motivated seller, negotiate a little bit harder than they could have a year ago or certainly 2 years ago. But it's not doom and gloom. In fact, I'm seeing a plateau of pricing. And so from a buyer, that's a really good place to be. We don't have to worry about buying and seeing our equity plummet, buying at $450 and a year later it's $350. There's nothing in our market here locally that's pointing to that. So what I'm seeing is an opportunity here, an opportunity for buyers to take a little more time looking, have a little more leverage in negotiation, but you're not, I mean, no one's taking $100,000 discounts right now. I can promise you that. We're not even close to any major discounts being had. We're at about a 5% average discount right now, 3 to 5% average discount. That's about as low as it's ever been for an average discount here on Central Vancouver Island. So there's opportunities. For buyers, it's a good time to be looking. You don't have to feel quite as pressured as buyers did in 2016, 17, 18, and 19. You can take a little more time to look around and hopefully not end up into a bidding war when you purchase. So, you know, whether you're 1 month away, 1 year away, 6 years away, let's just start filling in the blanks, get your questions answered, and get out there and looking. You know, there's no harm in looking. I call it calibrating your value. So just getting out there, watching what's going on in the marketplace, looking at a few properties safely, and seeing what's selling and for how much. You're calibrating your idea of what things are selling for. So when you are ready, you don't have to completely rely on your real estate expert. You have your own opinion of value. And the only way to get that is to take some time and get familiar with the market. And so if you want to start seeing homes in what you're looking for and what they're selling for, send us a message. We can send you a feed that shows you sale prices, and you can start calibrating your opinion of value. Okay. That is, brings us to 1 o'clock. That's all I've got for you guys today. I'm going to check the chat here for questions. We'll be happy to spend a few minutes answering them. If you have any questions, go ahead and either send them in. I've got the Facebook feed over here on my left. And there is all of our contact information right here. So you've got our website here, all our collective email addresses, and then all Jen's contact information. We are always here for you if you have any questions and want them answered. I know Jen's super generous with her time. If you have questions, Rory, Trevor, myself, we're always available to answer any questions you guys have. I'm going to stop the feed here so we can just see our faces. Don't see any questions. I see they love the analogy. Oh, here's a question. Okay, so Tamara's asking us, she's about 2 years out and moving back to the island. How far in advance? You know, as I mentioned, Tamara, and it's a great question. It's really not, it's never too early to start looking, because what you're going to start to see is trends. And if you have a good idea of the product and price category that you want to be purchasing in, think about how much you are going to know about that if in 2 years, if you're watching, you know, let's say you have maybe you're liking Departure Bay, Hammond Bay, Brecken Hill, and you need at least 1,800 square feet and a 2-car garage. Great. You know, identify your must-haves and your non-negotiable must-haves, and then start monitoring that product and price category. I know Rory, Trevor, myself have all had the experience where a client's coming to the table and they've been watching a specific product and price category so closely that they've got a better idea of values than us sometimes, because we have to have we have to be monitoring a broader perspective. We hone in on certain areas when we have clients looking at those areas, but clients will sometimes only be watching that area. And so they're very highly calibrated as to what homes are going to be selling for. That is a great place to be. I mean, having a client who already knows what values are, it's nice, because now I don't have to put my wrist on the line, and they know, they're seeing it the same as I. So when I say this home is going to go multiple if we don't make an offer by Sunday, they're like, I know. I've been watching every home that I saw like this that showed up in my feed had a sold status on it within 6 days. This is one of those homes. Now we don't have to learn the hard way a few times, like is often the case, where we have to lose out on a few. So they go, oh, okay. Now I know that, now I know Rory's telling me the right information. He said this was going to go multiple and sell above list. It did. Okay. Now there's the trust that's building up. And Tamara's asking, where do we go to see sale prices? Here in British Columbia, sale prices are not publicly available. You have to get access to them through a licensed real estate agent. So we can get you sales data. Tamara, any of the agents on Rory, Trevor, we can all get you sales data. You do have to get that data. It's not available to the public in our market yet in British Columbia. It is in some other markets, I think Toronto and a few others. I would love to see the public have access to sales data. They should have access to sales data. Right now, just some of the real estate boards are protecting that data. We've got someone just commenting on the Facebook page talking about investing in up and coming areas, giving some great advice on some things to look for on what's going to be great areas to invest in. And those are things that we'll be talking about. When we go through homes, you're going to find with us, we go through with a very critical eye. And we see it as our goal is to, as we already mentioned, to help you see the things that you might not notice because you don't go through homes. Rory and Trevor go through 40 homes a week for clients. So, you know, they've been through the house, probably been through the house you're looking at. They can answer questions on that. They're also trained to look past the staging and the fancy flowers and the new welcome mat and look for things that are signs that that you're going to want to look out for. You know, we do inspection walkthroughs with our clients and home inspectors all the time. We start to develop an eye to see things that that are often missed. You know, you're usually going to see a home maybe 1 or 2 times before you're looking at making an offer. And so we see it as our job to really point out those things that you might otherwise overlook. Okay, another question here. Where do you not be able to work? How will it? Okay, so Jen, this is one for you. We've got a couple here. One is going to school for doing their master's for 2 years, not able to work. The other is working. How is that going to affect their mortgage? What are just some of the things you're going to be looking at?
Also, in the past, we can still use income if we can prove it. So if they have part-time work while doing their master's or even full-time, we can do that. That's kind of tricky. But in other scenarios, I've actually had some parents come forward that will go on the mortgage. So if the client is doing their master's and going to school with full-time without work, we can't use them. But I've had parents come in and go on the file as guarantors to help with the qualifying, so they can buy, you know, an apartment or something to live in while they're studying. And if you are planning on moving a long way, it's way more beneficial to set up employment ahead of time. So get a transfer within your company, show that you can live in the 911 work, and then we can use your income. Because if you're just going to be leaving a job, let's say in Edmonton, but you're leaving and you're coming over, if we don't have any active income to work with, then we can't use any income to qualify you. So it's difficult to qualify for a mortgage, if not impossible. So get a transfer with your company, start interviewing on the island, get a short-term rental maybe for 3 months while you interview and set up your new income. But we do need current and active ongoing income to qualify for the mortgage. Or a parent who will come on who has pension income, maybe not a mortgage of their own. There's a lot of, once you actually look and I pose those questions to people, they'll go, oh, well, so-and-so will help me, or so-and-so will help me. There's usually a lot of help out there, but there's creative ways of getting around it for sure.
This is one of those questions that we get all the time. And one of the scenarios that presents itself here, as we talked about it, is just sometimes having a little more modest expectation for that first property. And so if you were to go into, let's say and this is how we built our rental portfolio. So we bought our first property and lived in it for a few years and built some equity in it. And then we found our second home. We bought it. We were able to use some of the equity of the home that we'd owned to purchase the next one, but we were still able to keep the original home. We rented it. It provided surplus income. And so the cash flow from the first home was helping to fund the second home. And so entry-level apartments that allow rentals, like what Trevor's bought into, or what virtually every new construction project here, we've got a few other projects in town here that are requiring 5% down, priced under $250,000 with full rental. So we can get into that. We can buy it. We can live in it. We can use the equity we build, still maintain it as an income producing asset, and leverage it to buy our second place. And you you just bought yourself, you just established yourself with an income producing asset in the form of a rental property and didn't have to put the 20 to 30% down that lenders would otherwise require if you just were wanting to buy a rental living in your house.
Yeah, exactly. Because a lot of people don't know if it's an investment property, you do have to come in with that 20% down. So doing the steps, it's really that's just our culture right now. You have to do the steps unless, you know, you come from a lot of money and there's a lot of support behind you. There's baby steps to get to it. But like you said, you know, refinance the equity in your first home, keep it as a rental and use that as your down payment for your second one. And you're putting 10, 15, 20% down. That's the way you almost have to do it now.
It's play the long game and look at, you know, you might not be as cool for the short term. You're the 21-year-old living in the crappy apartment with the beater car. And you've got your friend that's living in his parents' house for free and driving the fancy Tesla. I want to meet up with those two people in 10 years. In 10 years, where the person that was driving the beater, living in the entry-level apartment, paid off all their equity. Now they're living and owning a home in downtown Nanaimo or North Nanaimo, wherever they see their dream, and the other person's now in their beat up old Tesla that has no equity, is worth a tenth of what they paid for it, and they don't own any real estate. You know, it's playing the long game. It's easy to look good in the short term. It's hard to look good in the long term, and sometimes, you know, it's all about sacrifice today for a better tomorrow, and sometimes you got to you know, eat craft dinner for a little while to get where you need to be.
All right.
Well, go ahead, Trev.
Yeah, no, I think that was the last for questions here. But if you guys had any other points you wanted to hit on.
Well, one thing that just came up, you'd be surprised at how much a $600 car payment will change in your purchase price on a home.
Mm-hmm.
Like a $600 portion of your mortgage can get you a lot more of a house. So yeah, and that kind of brings it home too, you know, $600 for a car or, you know, $120,000 more purchase price. It's kind of
there it is. And then looking at Trevor and Rory now, $120,000 in the marketplace. You know, if you want to look at, you know, let's just go to condos, because I think that's where a lot of first-time home buyers really need to start out now, is $180,000 property versus a $240,000 prop. There's a huge difference between a $180,000 condo and a $250,000 condo. So that car payment is the difference between getting into a building that's maybe going to have some challenges and special assessments down the road to a brand new building that's still under warranty. And that's that car payment that's preventing you from getting there. So
it makes a big difference.
we got to wrap up. We've got a little bit overtime. I hope you guys got some value out of this. I have, I've got all our contact information on the screen here. And Jen, thank you for your time. Rory, Trevor, I know you guys are busy showing houses these days, and I appreciate you guys coming in here. Follow along with us at coopergroup.ca. Email us, text us. We're always available to answer your questions at any time. And stay safe out there. It looks like the economy is starting to turn itself back on, which is great news. I know if you've noticed, my barber just opened up shop again today, so I'm sporting a fresh new haircut. It feels so good. And I know there's a ton of other businesses opening back up right now. So it is going to be a busy summer, and we're here to help you navigate it. So thanks everybody for their time.
Take care, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, take care.